everyone. I wanted to share a live because last week I was at the Women in Business event in Dún Laoghaire where I had a stand, and the one thing that people asked me over and over again, interestingly, was how did I come to do what I do? And I was actually a little bit taken aback. I was like, oh, that's a really nice thing to be asked, like, you know. And the few people that I was talking to about it, they all just seemed so intrigued. Like, they were all like, oh my God, that's like so interesting. And I was like, do you know what? Maybe I don't share enough of that here. So I decided, hey, Keslet, how you doing? I decided that I would just share a bit of it today because I suppose in many ways, my clients are really very often a reflection of myself, where I was a couple of years ago, and that's just how it goes. You know, I always feel, even when we're looking at it astrologically, you know, your clients are you, really. Your mess is your message, and you know, where you were is really where your clients are. So where do I start? Start at the very beginning. I would say for the most part of my whole entire life, I didn't know who I was. I was abused when I was 4. I was bullied quite badly in primary school. And I'd say I was always a little bit of a chameleon in that I was able to blend into any group that I ended up in kind of subsequently later on in years. And a lot of that was probably survival mode, right? You know, survival over not wanting to get bullied again. And the reason I was bullied, in hindsight, I can kind of understand why. But at the time I thought, like, what's wrong with me? I was in a small class of maybe only about 5 or 6 girls, and there was 3 boys as well. And they were all friends with each other. And they all just couldn't stand me. They really just did not like me. And it became a bit of a thing to like include me for a little bit and then exclude me again. Or if one was fighting with one of their friends, they'd like befriend me just to annoy the other person. It was like, I'm friends with Debbie, like, you know, and it was just really annoying for the other person. So I became a bit of a tool to be used for people. And I guess as I got older, then I was like, do you know what? I just blend in. Like, I'll just be whoever they need me to be. I'll be the person that they kind of need me to be. And I think that a lot of people actually do this. You know, you don't have to be specifically bullied in school for this to happen. But people who are very energetically sensitive tend to blend into their surroundings a bit more and tend to kind of like nearly take on the personality of those that they hang around with. And it's a bit of a safety technique. And what I will say is it took me so many years to realize that what I had done was I had kind of nearly assumed that role, to the point that I just didn't know who I was myself. And I kind of assumed everybody else seemed to know me better than I know myself. And I actually remember like having snotty tear fests, crying and bawling into a pillow because my friend would know me better than I did. And it just felt so disempowering. And later on in relationships that I would have had, like friendships that I would have had, like my best friend of, I don't know how many years, I never really realized it until very late that I totally relied on her to tell me who I was and to see did I get it right. So if I had had an experience, I would nearly expect her to be able to feed back to me to see if I had picked it up correctly, or to see if I had interpreted the experience correctly, to see that I have a proper understanding of it, because I just didn't trust myself. I just did not trust myself. Now, what I will say in hindsight, it took me up until my mid-30s to actually realize that that is so dangerous. Man, that is so dangerous. Because for me, that particular person had quite a lot of, I'm not going to say they're narcissistic, because the whole world says everybody's narcissistic these days, right? And there is a such thing as narcissistic personality disorder. And I'm not somebody to go around diagnosing with anybody with narcissistic personality disorder. And if I'm really honest, I reckon most people have a little bit of narcissistic tendencies anyway. But for me, I just felt like she had quite a lot of, I didn't know what narcissism was then. And in hindsight, there was a lot of that going on. And so that's really, really dangerous to hand over your power. You know, if you don't know who you are and you feel that you have to constantly look outside of yourself for guidance, i.e., if you're making a decision that you need to like ask your best friend or like ask 20 people because you don't trust your own opinion, because you don't trust your own belief system, because you don't trust like your own choices and judgments, then it's dangerous, you know. And what we're going to do is attract into our lives people who are going to take advantage of that as a means of pushing us back into alignment so we take ownership of it for ourselves. So for me, as I said, I was bullied in primary school. I ended up with a friendship who was my best friend. You know, I thought she was my best friend for years, and she was my best friend for years. But when I got to know myself, I then realized, I was like, oh my God, I have been relying on this person for my whole entire life to tell me who I am, are my decisions correct, my opinions right? And quite often that was actually used against me. And there was a lot of gaslighting done in that friendship, in that on so many occasions I would have what I would think was like a clear memory, and then she'd say, no, that never happened. And I'd be like, oh my God, am I losing my mind? Like, or she'd be like, no, you're totally making that up. And I'd be like, how am I totally making it up? Like, it's a whole memory in my head. How is that a thing that I've made it up? Or we'd be chatting with people and I'd say, do you remember the thing? And like, I'd tell the whole story and she'd be like, no, I don't remember that. So she would make me second guess myself a lot. And what I will say is that yes, at the time it was toxic and I didn't realize it. And if I'm really honest with you, it absolutely made me question and doubt my own identity. It made me question and doubt myself. It made me honestly want to not be here at times. I remember bawling my eyes into a pillow, being like, why do other people know me better than I know myself? Why can't I just figure myself out? Why can't I know myself the way other people know me? And it was that toxic relationship that was causing so much of it. Like, I really honestly lay back sometimes and I was like, I just don't want to be here. So for the best part of my younger years, I honestly really, really struggled with myself. In school, I wasn't accepted as who I am. Later on in life, as I said, my closest friend was not a healthy relationship, and we would always do what she wanted to do, but anytime it was something I wanted to do something, she would just not be available, or she wouldn't be into it, and there was a lot of control in that way, you know. And because I handed over my identity, because I didn't trust myself, she got to use it for me, and I was putty in her hands. And I don't blame her, because I allowed that to happen, you know. I allowed myself to be putty in her hands because I needed somebody to mold me, and she did a great job at that, you know. It took me a lot of life crisis for me to step back into my power. So I'm just coming back for anybody who's joined. The main question, like, people have asked me, like, how did I come to doing what I'm doing? And I actually wrote a 3-part book series on this whole journey, not specifically to what I'm doing now actually, but just in general. But then later in life, so I said I was abused when I was younger. There was a lot of bullying when I was in school, and then later on friendships were kind of toxic, and I ended up in one of my kind of first proper relationships. I developed an allergy. You're going to want to hear this one, right? I developed an allergy to sex, right? I swear, that's a thing. It actually really happened. And I would say like 8 or 9 times out of 10 of actually having sex, I would end up with these like massive explosion in my eyes. So I would have this allergic reaction where my eyes would literally like puff up. There would be no rash, so it wasn't like it was a really obvious thing that there was something wrong. It was that my eyes got really, really exploded, and I literally looked like I was auditioning for Star Wars. I remember being like, this is horrendous. And that was a really long relationship that I was in. But I didn't know what was causing it. We went to doctors and specialists, and basically we deduced that we just had some sort of allergy to sex. It was nothing to do with latex or anything like that. It was to do with him. And it wouldn't be till many, many years later that I would figure out what that was, which I'll share in a minute. Hang on the edge of your seats. And then later I ended up in another relationship where I was engaged to get married. And my partner, I developed this really, really, really weird fear of sex, right? It was very, very strange. Like, it happened out of nowhere. And it would literally be to the extent that I'd be in our kitchen, and like even if he just looked at me crooked, I'd be like, oh my god, he's going to like want to do something and I don't want to do it, and how am I going to get out of it? And like he literally couldn't look at me crooked, and I'd be panicking. It was like, I remember thinking it was like having a freight train running through my head with fear and anxiety of all these thoughts of like, how am I, like, I, you know, what the heck is going on? And it felt like there was like an invisible force field stopping me, like stopping me from doing anything. And then when we did, oh my god, it was just, I literally had to shut off, and I had to force myself, because there was nothing in my relationship at that time. There was actually nothing wrong with our relationship. We had a really good relationship at the time, and he was a great guy, and I remember thinking like, I was so lucky, and the fact that he was putting up with me with all this weird stuff going on. He had no idea that I literally had a freight train running through my head at every moment. It got so bad, I went off and I was doing hypnotherapy for it, and nothing really worked. Then I went and I had acupuncture for it, and acupuncture actually helped a little bit. It helped to reduce the anxiety, but it still didn't fully get me past this fear I had. And in and around the same time, I developed bowel incontinence. Seriously, it's like one thing after the other. And I remember I used to go out walking in a park. I used to go walking all the time, and I would literally be caught short, and I'd have to like run into the ditch out of nowhere. And this was so bad that I remember going to a rugby match. It was on the Dart on a train on the way to the rugby match with my partner at the time. And I was like, oh my god, it's happening, freaking out, sitting on the freaking train. Like, and I don't know any of you guys, but if there's a match on, it was a rugby match and it was a big one, if there's a match on, the trains are just jam-packed. And we were sitting down, and I remember I looked over at him and I was like, oh my god, I think this is actually going to happen here, and if it does, please just get up and leave at the next stop. I will stay until the train gets to the very end and turns around again, and hopefully there won't be anybody on it, and I'll get off then. But I was like, oh my god, I'm literally going to poop on myself. It was horrendous. It didn't happen, but it like really, really nearly did. And it would happen quite a bit to me, so that's why I was kind of worried about it. So the whole lot of that, later, so in I'll get back to the point as to why this was all happening, because I didn't know at the time why it was happening. I just thought there was something wrong with me. And then later on, fast forward a couple of years, in 2015, my dad passed away suddenly. Well, reasonably suddenly. He had cancer, and he had heart stuff going on. Then he had cancer stuff going on. Then he got the all clear on my brother's birthday in October. And then it came back out of nowhere with a vengeance, and he died Christmas Eve 2015. And that was hard, because I was daddy's little girl and absolutely had loved my dad. And then about 10 months later, I was away for Halloween weekend with my fiance, and I won't go into it here because it's too long, and literally I've written a 3-part book series about all of this stuff. But basically I discovered, because of a pop-up on his phone, that there was something going on, that he was either cheating on me, or he was seeing somebody else, or he was dating, or there was something going on. And I used to be the kind of person who, if something like that would happen, I'd be like, oh no, it's just me. That's just me. Like, and I don't want to be that girl. Like, I don't want to be that girl who's all paranoid about her fella, or I don't want to be the kind of girl who like checks her fella's phone, or I don't want to be, do you know, that kind of thing. Like, Hollywood is like, fuck you, Hollywood, because it has us feeling like only a certain type of girl comes up with these crazy ideas that her partner's doing something weird or whatever, or only a crazy girl is like paranoid that her partner is doing something behind her back, and then they make her out to just be like, yeah, crazy. And so when this happened, I remember being like, I don't want to be that girl. Like, that's just me being paranoid. That's just me being jealous, or me being whatever. You know, he's like, this guy was amazing. He would walk your granny across the street. He was just so good. And no, I pressed and pressed and pressed, and then I unraveled a messy woolly jumper of BS over a period of a month. It was the most horrendously long-winded, very painful experience of where he kept saying, no more, there's no more, and that I kept unraveling loads of stuff. He had a sex addiction, he had a porn addiction, he had He was curb crawling. He was, when he'd go out and nights out in town, he would come back and he would be curb crawling. He was on sex line. I'm like trying to take out the words because I think that this gets censored on Instagram. But he was on sex lines and different dating websites. He was on hookups. He was like ringing escorts. He was doing like chatting with people over the internet, and they were like flashing each other. He had an app where he could send like dirty pics, and it's endless. It's really, really endless, the stuff that he was doing, and I had absolutely no idea whatsoever. And when I say that this guy, you would just not know. Just wasn't, just honest to God, you would never guess. So we were together like 5.5 years. To discover all this, I was like, how did I not know any of this, you know? And it was only when I started to unfold it and unravel it, I was like, oh my God, so much makes sense. The fear of sex that I had was not me that there was something wrong with. My feminine intuition, my physical body was protecting me from being with him, was protecting me from sleeping with him. And I had no idea. The bowel incontinence was absolutely my body reacting to the subconscious knowing of what was going on, and my conscious mind not catching up with that, and the stress and the anxiety of it. And what's interesting in hindsight is the first boyfriend I told you about, where I had the allergies to it. He later, we discovered that he was suffering really badly with depression. Now, I work with energy now, but back then it just shows like it was a very, very sensitive, energetically sensitive person. So actually what was happening was he was severely depressed and wasn't expressing his emotions, and they were coming out through me, through my eyes, through my body instead of his. So it was like I was crying the tears that he didn't, but I wasn't crying. It was like just the reaction, the panda eyes of it. It was very strange. So with all of that, I remember being like, you know, what is wrong with me? Like, I need to fix myself. I spent an eternity trying to fix myself. I went on, I studied hypnotherapy and psychotherapy. I did more of the hypnotherapy than the psychotherapy. What else did I do? I can't even think now, loads of stuff. But basically I was using all these different things to try and understand myself, to help myself, to figure myself out, to see what I could do to understand why my mind is the way it is. And basically through years of going to healers and therapists and all sorts of weird, wacky and wonderful modalities, I ended up kind of gathering a lot of wisdom and knowledge along the way. Completely obsessed with self-help and personal development and anything kind of psychology or metaphysical or down to earth woo-woo without the fluff, as I say. And that was really me trying to fix myself better. And then, so basically after all of that shenanigans, I basically, through the years, had struggled with this feeling of not wanting to be here. I often did not want to be here. I often really was like, I just don't get it. I don't seem to be able to keep myself in any kind of phase of happiness. It just seemed to be, I just keep struggling with who I was. That's what it was. And when all of the SHIT hit the fan after my dad died, and then after discovering all the stuff with my fiance, I obviously called off the wedding. And I remember lying in bed. There was nothing left for me. My job was horrendously stressful. My dad was gone. The man I loved and our future was gone. And I remember lying in bed in our house at the time, and I was lying facing up in the dark, and I was like, just take me. If people get a decision to go, just take me. I had Googled and looked up ways to leave that was going to cause the least amount of harm to other people. I literally have done my research on the quickest, easiest, most effective way of leaving, because I didn't want, and really what kept me here was I didn't want to hurt my mum. I just didn't want to hurt my mum. And I also didn't want to have to come back and do it all over again, because I was like, what if I've done this in every lifetime? What if I have pressed the escape button and I've left, and every single lifetime I've done that and I have to keep coming back. I was like, no, I can't do I was like, I can't do this anymore. And I was also afraid I would do it wrong, if I'm really honest with you as well. So but I had also had this homesick feeling for many years, this feeling of wanting to go home. That's not because of being sad or depressed, but a feeling of wanting to go home. That's more like a homesickness feeling, like a craving of going back to the void, back to where you come from and where you go to. And for me, it's always been something that I battled with, because I've found earth, I've found here to be just really thick and heavy and dense and sludgy with emotions. And it's very hard to navigate everybody's personalities and everybody's feelings, and trying to fit in and trying to be the right person, and whilst also trying to be yourself and find yourself and know yourself, and the pain and the hurt in the world, like all these things used to make me not want to come home. I remember being like, I didn't sign up for this, like surely it doesn't have to be like this all the time. So really I was like, get me the fuck out of here. And like, you know, I won't lie, even there's times even today and I'm like I did not sign up for this. Like where was the small print? And who distracted me as I was signing the papers to come here? And because it's tough here, especially when you're somebody who's energetically sensitive in any way, really, if you're empathic. So fast forward, Deborah, get to the point. So basically I'm lying there on the bed and I'm like, just fucking take me, because I don't have the numpty to do it myself. I'm like, just take me. And then, much to my dissatisfaction, about 10 minutes later of lying there, I was still there. And I was like, you're freaking kidding me. So I was like, oh my God. And then as I was lying there, the word travel came into my head. And so I sat up and I was like, just thought again. And then the word travel came in again. I was like, oh my God, I can go traveling. I've all this money from the wedding and everything around me has fallen apart. Nothing is familiar anymore. My life is not familiar anymore. And the only way is up, like, so the only thing I can think of to do when nothing is recognizable is like literally go travel. So that's what I did. I started off with working with ayahuasca in Peru, in the jungles with some shamans, and basically did that for about a month thereabouts. And while I was with them, we were looking at kind of using different herbal medicine and stuff, and I got really, really into it. And then very unintentionally ended up going on either herbal medicine courses, internships or apprenticeships in every country I visited, because I just loved the traditional wisdom and knowledge that I was getting from all these different countries. It was just fascinating. And then I ended up studying reflexology. I ended up studying meditation. Because I had nothing left to lose, and because I didn't know myself previous to that, and because nothing was familiar, I was in an absolute state of surrender. And so the only thing really that I could do was just keep surrendering to life. And as it happened, I just kept being given the most amazing offers to do the most amazing things and go to the most amazing places. And I just kept saying yes to things. And I was like, okay, well, we'll see where that goes. And so I ended up just collecting a ton of wisdom and knowledge and different skills and abilities as I traveled around the world. And before I'd left, a friend of ours who runs a holistic centre here in Ireland had said, she was like, Deborah, please learn Reiki, like just learn Reiki. And so we did Reiki, and I remember being like, I've been doing this for years. Like my mum and dad, when I had really, really bad eczema as a kid, my dad would I used to go, will you heat my hands? He'd put his hands over my eczema to make it not itchy. And if my hands were too hot, I'd give them to mum and she'd make them cooler. So it's been in my family for ages. My dad was a healer, but nobody ever really spoke about it. He helped animals and people and whatever. So it's been there all the time. I just never really knew it. As in, I knew it, but I didn't know it as a thing. It was just a thing that I had. So Reiki gave me a system to work with. And then I basically was using that on myself as I was traveling. And then I was using meditation as I was traveling. I would journal all the time anyway. And then what did I collect along the way? Yeah, I just started using like acupressure and reflexology. My Christ, oh my God, it's so good. Like I suppose the whole basis for why I've been doing what I do is because I know that we've been born with natural gifts to be able to heal ourselves. If you look at animals, right, any animal, insect, bee, bird, whatever you want to call it, even plants, innately, inherently already know how to heal itself. You put a big gash in the side of a tree, and if it's not too deep, the tree will heal itself. An animal hurts itself and it will know how to heal itself, whether it's, dogs or cats, when they don't feel well, they'll eat grass and it makes them throw up, so it makes them throw up whatever is in their stomach. They know that naturally. But as humans, we have lost our connection to nature so badly that we are following other humans telling us how to be a human, right? We are not tapping into our intuition. We're not tapping into our instincts. We are literally bypassing them, allowing other people to tell us who to be. And this is from the government down. This is literally everything. This is marketing and advertising, telling you, like, marketing was developed by Sigmund Freud, the great psychotherapist. You know that marketing was actually created by his nephew. Think about that. Marketing is all about manipulation of your mind. It's about, like, the beauty industry is designed to make you feel shit so that you go and you buy their products. That's how it works. There's a certain chemical and smell in a certain fast food chain that has a big M like that on it, and it's designed to make you hungry and to crave it. Sugary food is designed to make you crave more sugary food. Like, we are living in a world that is absolutely manipulated down to the bottom line on making you do the things that you do, because nobody has ever taught you how to not be susceptible to that programming. And what happened to me when I was traveling was I removed myself from my normal surroundings, and I was fortunate to do this. Not everybody gets the opportunity to do this. But because I took myself out of my familiar surroundings and plonked myself in the middle of absolutely not connected to anything, and I wouldn't have had my phone with me all the time because it would have been too expensive to roam with my phone at that time. I wasn't connected to, I had already kind of stopped. Actually, when I was going on the ayahuasca dieta, the shamans actually tell you to go on like a diet of media. So no newspapers, no radio, no books, no magazines, no songs, no nothing. And I remember thinking that was pure odd the first time. Now that's actually one of the tools that I use in my 8-week program with people, because it's actually in that silence that you can learn so much about yourself. And you realize when you stop listening to the news and media, you realize how much you've been programmed. It is nuts and it is insane. And people say, oh, that's a conspiracy. It's not a conspiracy. The only reason it's said to be a conspiracy is by the people who don't want you to think that it's not a conspiracy, right? This is like, if you start doing any level of psychology, you become aware and begin to see the amount of mass manipulation there is in the world. Every single bit of marketing is designed to coerce you into doing something, which is why I hate marketing so much, if I'm really honest with you. But I'm a business, and as a business I need to do sales and marketing, but I'm doing it to help people. I'm not trying to take advantage of people, but there's so many people out there that use it as a tool to take advantage of people. So, TV programs are not called programs for nothing, because they're programming your mind. Pop songs are all about heartache, heartbreak, and you did this to me and I'll do this to you, and I'm going to be lost without you and I can't live without you, and this is how I feel, like I'm completely not a human if I don't have you. Like, how disempowering is that? And we go around like singing to ourselves all these amazing pop songs. You're actually genuinely programming your system when you do that. You're programming your mind. Like, what are affirmations? Affirmations are saying the same statement over and over and over again with feeling and emotion. What do you do with a pop song? You're like feeling this amazing song, and then you're listening to the words are pure tripe, and you're like, okay, you're totally conditioning yourself. So I gave up all of that. So I wasn't listening to any media, watching any newspapers or TV or whatever. And when I was away, I was like, oh my God, it's purely because I removed myself from it all that I began to see the mass manipulation out there, which included me realizing that my friend, my closest friend, was also a massive manipulator. And I'm so grateful to have been able to see that, because then I just left that all behind. But basically, again, fast forward, because I'm sure you're probably all falling asleep at this stage, if you're even listening still at this stage. Basically, I came back from traveling, was like, I'm not going back into a 9 to 5. I'm going to be my own boss. Worked for 1 or 2 companies, went back to my old original company, was made redundant, and was like, okay, I need to figure out what is my thing. And I started using astrology to be able to figure who I was out and where I was meant to be going. So in astrology, you can look at your north and south node. Your south node tells you where you're stuck and where you're coming from and where you've had past lives, abundant past lives in it, and you're not meant to be doing it anymore, but you get stuck there. And your north node is completely opposite to that and basically tells you where you're meant to be going in this lifetime. What is your life mission? What are the unique set of skills that you haven't yet learned that you need to learn in this lifetime? And that's your north and south node in astrology. I was able to look at my ascendant. My rising sign tells you what it is your soul wants you to do in this world. Your sun sign tells you what helps you to shine and give you vitality. Your Venus sign tells you the kind of relationships that you attract, what you desire and love, and how you love others and how you want them to love you. Mars is your desire and action. Saturn is where you have your biggest life lessons. Chiron is the wounded healer and tells you about the unique wounding that you've come into this lifetime to explore and discover. And when I started looking at astrology, I was like, oh my God, there's so many parts of myself that I have been actively trying to fix for years, which actually were showing up in my chart as me. And I remember thinking, like, that's why I couldn't run away from myself. That's why I couldn't change who I was, because it was me trying to change myself to be the person that I thought I was according to other people, when in actual fact, I needed to be the person that I came here to be, which was through my astrology. And it was through the astrology that I started to learn to accept myself, learn to own the parts of me that I had previously disowned, and start to really come back home to myself. And so that's a very long-winded story, what led me to doing what I'm doing today. Because when I was going through all that stuff with my fiance, like, there was nothing out there about, you know, how to cope with a partner who's got a sex addiction problem, and you're not the one with the addiction, but you're trying to figure out, are you supposed to stay or go? Can you recover from that? Is it something that you can survive? I didn't know that. I didn't know. There was no resources for me. And I remember at the time being like, if I can figure this out, I want to help other people figure this out too. The same thing with my friendship, you know, I was totally handing away my power for years because I didn't trust who I was. I didn't trust my own opinion. I totally second guessed my intuition, and I didn't think I knew myself at all. I did, but I didn't think I did. And the astrology helped me to figure that out. And then the Reiki has been what has guided me to feeling some sense of freaking normality, even when I feel like I'm on the bridge of like spinning out. Meditation for me is about like my plate wobble, when I feel like I'm completely out of balance, totally out of sync, I'll do meditation. Because the way I kind of see it is like, you know, when you're spinning plates and you stop spinning them and they do this weird wobbly thing, like when I'm not doing meditation, I get like the wobbly plate syndrome, right? And that makes me go, okay, I need to do meditation again. But like all of these tools that I've learned as I was traveling, and as I was learning on that journey that I just kind of explained to you in terms of how I was like trying so desperately to fix myself, these are all the tools that I now use for myself still to this day, like back remedies and essential oils and herbal medicine and journaling and everything, you know, all the things. I still use them myself. But the stuff that I share with my clients is only ever stuff that has worked for me, because I know there was so many things that I tried through the years and they didn't work for me. And why they didn't work for me was because I couldn't understand and wasn't able to interpret my experiences. The louder something is shouting at you, the more attention it's asking you to understand what's behind it. So as I said, when I had the fear of sex, that wasn't me. I thought there was something wrong with me. I thought that I was broken. I thought my, abuse as a child meant that I was going to be ruined as a human for the rest of my life. And I didn't realize my body was protecting me. My body was talking to me. My body was saying, do not get into bed with that man because he's doing loads of other weird stuff. And we're not going to be energetically connected with that. And so all the stuff that I use now, and all the learning and all the interpreting and all the understanding how life works that little bit more, and I am still figuring it out, and I'm still learning, and I do not get it right all the time, and I have to relearn, and sometimes I have to like relearn and do my own. I'll have gone through all this, I'll be teaching it with my clients, but then like something will knock me on my ass and I'd be like, okay, I need to take my own medicine now. Like at the moment, I spent the last 2-3 weeks on like spiritual crack cocaine because I was like in this weird obsessive trying to fix myself place. And actually what was happening was it was a trauma response. I was stuck in a state of fear, and I was in a loop. I was in a trauma loop, and I could see what I was doing was self-help and self-development. I was like fixing myself to within an inch of my life, and to the point that it was really pulling apart my identity and my character and the whole lot. And I am through that. I'm still processing a lot of it because I have a lot of challenging astrology this year, but I have all the tools to be able to cope with that, you know. And all that time in the past when I didn't want to be here, that I really, really struggled with wanting to be here, after not doing something stupid, I remember being like, I am so glad that I didn't do that, because how beautiful is this world? How beautiful are the trees and the colours and the nature and the world that we live in when we have happier eyes to look at it through. And every time, and you know, this is something I probably will, you know, have to face every now and again through my life as I go through this spiral of growth that we have. You know, at some point I'm going to meet another part along the road that will be like, oh my god, I don't want to be here, get me the fuck off this roundabout. And because I've been here so many times and now have the tools, now I can coach myself out of it and be like, okay, well, you know that before the last time you felt like this, you were glad that you didn't do it. And you know before that you have all these tools, let's go do the tools. And sometimes I don't want to do tools, right? But my point is I have the tools there if I want to use them. Now what I do is I allow myself to wallow, cry it out, do whatever it is I need to do, tell myself I have a bit of a time scale, 3-4 days, go do it, and then I'm going to climb back out of it. Because there's always something better waiting after you surrender. But it's getting to the point of surrender sometimes is what you need to do. And as I said, I'm not perfect. I'm able to help people, and I'm able to help them feel the confidence to take back ownership of their life and to step into their power. But that doesn't mean that that's them solved for the rest of life, because it is a spiral, guys. You know, it's doing the work helps you to be prepared for more of the work that you need to do. And then when you prepare for that work, then you're going to be prepared for more of the work that you need to do. And rather than all of that just keep landing on top of you down here, you want to keep moving, and you want to keep spiraling and kind of getting stronger and better. So that's basically how I got here, how I ended up doing what I was doing. Reiki was what kept me in balance. Meditation is what keeps my head on straight and helps me to connect in with myself. Astrology is what helps me to understand who I am when I'm confused. And then mentoring, my life skills, is what I do with myself. It's like using the practical day-to-day wisdom and tools so that you don't have to fall back into that pit of despair over and over and over again. So yeah, that's how I got here. That's my story. It's much bigger than that, but like this is like the Instagram live version. If you're interested and you want to know more, I have a 3-part book series called Coming Home to Me. It's part 1, 2, and 3. There is tons in there that's going to inspire you, that's going to have you crying, laughing, angry, enjoy. It's going to be like you're going to be all over the place with it, but it's a freaking good read, and it is going to offer you support and courage and transformation on your own journey, because there's so many different themes and topics in there. There's like love and adventure as well, and learning and healing and all manner of strange shenanigans. So if whatever's going on in your life, those books, they're going to have stuff that's going to help you. I would say read all 3. Don't pick one and not read the others, because it'll help you. It'll give you context. So yeah, so you can grab a copy of that on Amazon, or you can go to my website and you can purchase it from there as well. If any of this resonates with you and you want to have a chat and see if any of the services that I offer can help you, then please do drop me a DM. If you know somebody who's struggling in repetitive patterns, who's struggling to trust themselves, to have confidence in their own decision making, to have people who've got issues with like boundaries, or like be people pleasing, or basically stress and anxiety and overwhelm, anything to do with those subjects and topics, even down to things like digestive issues and insomnia, they're all energetic. It's all emotional and it's all energetic. If you know somebody who's struggling, just send them to my Instagram and let them check me out and see if they're interested. And if any of you guys are interested in working with me, you can as well. I have a signature program. It's a 4-month program, and you can do the whole kit and caboodle: Reiki, astrology, and holistic life skills mentoring. It is incredibly transformational to do. So you can either work with me 4 months and do the whole lot, or you can do a la carte, and you can do either Reiki or either astrology or either holistic life skills mentoring or whatever. And if you're on the road where you've been doing the work and you're at the point of awakening, where you're like, oh my God, this world is not what I thought it was, and there's loads of crazy shit going on behind the scenes, and like you're starting to like wig out and be like, what is real and what's not real anymore, that's your dark night of the soul. It means that your consciousness is evolving. Don't be alone in that. That's something I can help you with as well. I can help you to understand what it is that's going on, why it's going on, how to interpret it, and feel more grounded in that experience as well, because that's tough. It's really tough. It's not called Dark Night of the Soul for no reason. And there's a lot of people who are going through a lot of that ascension or awakening or whatever you want to call it. You know, it's basically becoming more, the understanding of the world that you're living in and the simulation that we're living in becomes a little bit more apparent. So if that interests you to find out more, if you've been down the rabbit hole and you're like, oh my God, I don't know what to trust anymore and how to figure it out, then come talk to me. And that is it, guys. Thank you for those of you who have joined me and tuned in. I feel very humbled and grateful by the fact that you're still here and haven't left and maybe fallen asleep. I don't know. I always think when I'm sharing my story, I'm like, do people want to hear this? Which is probably why I've not really shared it before. Or like little tidbits of it anyway. So hopefully it was interesting. But yeah, I'd love to know, if any of this resonated with you. Do you get any of it? Have you any questions? How can I help you? And all the rest of it. And outside of that, I will say goodbye and talk to you soon. Thanks, guys. Bye.